Thank you. With that, good evening, distinguished invitees, assembled delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening once again to you all. On behalf of ET Brand Equity and Clever Tap, I extend a very, very warm welcome to each one of you present here to the Big Leap Rise with Retention Roadshow Bangalore chapter. This is Bangalore chapter. Let's begin with a huge round of applause. Everyone, come on. Thank you. My name is Anita. I'm your host for this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Bezos had once said, "We see our customers as invited guests to a party. And we are the host. It's our job every day to make every important aspect of customer experience a little better." With that, the Big Leap in a nutshell has been hosting exclusive interviews, multiple city roadshows, retention masterclasses, chat shows, networking events, and informal meetups with India's digital pioneer. Before I take this entire event forward, I request all of you to look at the screen once again because we have the recap of last few roadshows which were truly amazing and successful. Everyone, your eyes on the big screen. Recap of the roadshow.
Brand Equity and Clever Tap joined forces to bring in the most comprehensive and biggest ever program in the customer retention domain.
Like we can all talk about attraction measures, but the real game is in retention.
Because there are less audience this time.
Engagement is a leading indicator of long-term retention. So if you are able to get a lot of people engaged, it's much more likely to stick on to the app.
There is nothing which retains a customer more of his trust if you don't consistently give him what he wants.
It is about understanding how a group will behave and then predicting that this user.
Thank you for watching. Thank you once again. With that, ladies and gentlemen, today at the final Rise with Retention Roadshow Bangalore chapter, co-organized by ET Brand Equity and Clever Tap, we will deep dive into customer journeys and how brand can create customized solution to retain them. We are also glad to host our esteemed speaker who will share insights on transforming customer journeys, turning users into superfans, which is also theme for today. With that, we are all good to begin the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, the growth journey of digital brands does not end with user acquisition. Today, successful brands understand the need to keep users engaged and hooked onto their platform to unlock true growth. However, easier said than done, driving continuous user engagement and retention is extremely hard. Let's hear it from the experts today as they share their experience, knowledge, and insights on how, in this ever evolving landscape of customer behavior, businesses can build better customer engagement strategies to deliver unique experiences to their customers to transform them into loyal customer and brand advocates. With that, join me welcoming our esteemed panelists on stage as they share key insights on transforming customer journeys, turning user into superfans. Everyone, let's welcome our panelists. I would like to request Mr. Sriram Srinivasan, Head of Digital, Ujjivan Small Finance Bank, to come on stage. Put your hands together. Sriram is a digital transformation and cybersecurity leader with extensive years of experience influencing C-level businesses, decision maker. A very, very warm welcome to you, sir. And joining him, the next panelist, Mr. Ishendra Agarwal, founder and CEO Jeevam. Ishendra has extensive years of experience in consulting, venture capital, and has worked in Boston Consulting Group and Guild Capital. A warm welcome to you, sir. Let's also put our hands together. Let's welcome Mr. Ganesh Vasudevan, Senior Vice President and Head Digital Initiative, Marketing and Corporate Communication, Cholamandalam. A very, very warm welcome to you, sir. Mr. Ganesh has over 20 years of experience. He currently heads Digital Initiative, Marketing and Corporate Communications. He is a business builder and has successfully built several ideas into scalable, profitable businesses. I request all of you to put your hands together while I welcome Mr. Ankit Garg, founder of WakeFit, on stage. With over 10 years of experience in professional domain, Ankit initiated WakeFit's journey in 2015. His previous things include biochemicals and Tapso. Mr. Hitat Saini, Head of Marketing Money Tap, request you to please come on stage. Hitat has been instrumental in scaling the business. He helped develop strategy to launch a futuristic, scalable brand and take Frio businesses from a single product to a multi-product company. Mr. Saini, please come on stage, sir. Okay. Mr. Amarpreet Singh, co-founder and COO, Neiman's, on stage, please, everyone. Mr. Amar is a veteran in operations and leading companies with over 15 years of experience in running various startups. Let's welcome Mr. Nitin Garg, Vice President, Business Gamescraft. Nitin heads the business vertical at Gamescraft. As part of this role, he leads the revenue planning, monetization and retention agenda for the portfolio of brands. I would also like to invite our next panelist, Mr. Anshuman Goswami, Head Marketing and Communication, Better Place, with over 12 years of experience driving brand growth, communication strategies, and corporate positioning. Anshuman has been a growth driver for leading Indian brands. He has worked across sector ranging from e-commerce, fintech to aviation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the Chief Customer Officer, Clever Tap, none other than Mr. Abhishek Gupta. Everyone, let's welcome him on stage. Mr. Abhishek is a seasoned business leader and has led a number of SaaS and internet businesses with an immense focus on customer success and thereby building high growth businesses. So here we have the panelists. Everyone, once again, put your hands together. To moderate the very interesting session, I would like to request Mr. Gautam Srinivasan, senior journalist, on stage. Gautam's expertise in editorial and branded content span an 18-year journey with leading media conglomerates in Asia. That's Gautam for us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Anita, and thank you everyone for being here. I know it's an evening. I know attention spans are low, so we'll try our best to retain your attention in consonance with what we are discussing, rise with retention. So thank you again. Thank you so much. Give yourself a round of applause for being here. And we'll try our best to make it as interesting as possible in the context of what we are discussing, which is transforming customer journeys and how brands turn customers into super fans, turn users into super fans. And we've got a collection of speakers here, a collection of brands spanning jewelry, sneakers, finance, the home solutions. So you've got a range of experiences to learn from when it comes to your brand and how you think about retention. So thank you everyone on the panel for joining us. Hitat will be with us shortly. So we'll start things off on a lighter note. Let's understand the personalities who are here and see what they think about some of the issues which goes through everyone's mind. So we'll start with understanding outside of your own, which brand or service are you a fan of? Ishendra, how about we start with you?
Sure. So the brand which I really like the most and I follow is Nike.
Okay.
And not just because of the product is phenomenal. It is very good, but also because of the way the brand is positioned. When you wear a shoe, the kind of comfort you get, and at the same time, the whole messaging around the brand, the story and the positioning of the brand itself attracts a lot of coolness, but at the same time, the sports.
So everything is in
Is
sync.
the factor, right? And
Let's see if Amarpreet responds to that. What would you say? As a sneaker company, a response to what Ishendra has mentioned, and from your perspective, your favorite brand and why?
Yes, definitely Nike has been an inspiration to all of us, not only for footwear, it's for everybody, because of the way the messaging is, it's completely unique. And the loyal customer database, it's like hats off to them, what they have done. No other brand in the world has created that kind of atmosphere within the ecosystem. But when it comes to the present ecosystem, there are many who inspire us. Inspire definitely me. I've had learnings from many brands, but one or two brands which stand out. One definitely would be Wakefit, because my friend Ankit. What I've seen is, because when we wanted to get into sneakers, a lot of people discouraged us, saying that who will buy sneakers online. Then I told them that there is a mattress being sold online. I'll tell you a small story. 4, 5 years back, 6 years back, I made a house. I went on to the traditional players, bought mattresses, paid 3 times or 4 times. And in the last year, when I bought a mattress online, had to convince my father that it is possible. Mattress online is possible. And only company which has made it possible, I believe, is Wakefit.
Is Wakefit.
It really inspires me. And there's one more which inspires, that is Licious. The reason is because the whole ecosystem or the whole mutton industry or the non-veg industry is kind of unorganized, wherein you 6 years or 10 years back, you do stand in queues with the butcher shops. Now it's like on a press of a button, you get everything at home within 30 minutes.
And buying meat via a digital app was not
the
seen as
digital
the
app,
norm,
and the
right?
experience is top notch.
Yeah.
I used to remember on a Sunday, my mother used to tell me, or my wife used to tell me, that go to a mutton shop and get a mutton. And I used to send my driver. I don't want to stand in a queue. Now what Licious has done is they've created a top-notch experience. So that itself is hats off.
So laziness can also be a driver of.
Again, I don't want to get to the Zeptos and big baskets of the world. I'm not going there.
All
But
right.
still, these two brands stand out.
Fair point. So Ankit, I'll get you to respond on this, on what has been mentioned by Amar, the whole Yari Dosti context. But it also makes sense. What you're doing is different. What Amar is doing is different. What Ishendra is doing is different. So from your perspective, the brand that you love the most, so that we can keep this chain going.
First of all, thank you, Amar. Thanks for the kind words.
You can't say his brand name.
No, of course. No, I think more than a brand, I think I love this company, HUL.
Sorry, if you can speak a bit loudly, back
No, I said
back audience can
more
hear
than a
you.
brand, I love this company, HUL, because of the simple reason that they've created house of brands successfully, consistently, and every year they come up with something which is long lasting and has an impact in the market. So I feel the processes, the kind of teams that they've built are just amazing, that they're able to create more than 20 brands successfully rolled out all across India.
All right. For them. HUL for its ability to build a house of brands, absolutely. And of course, it's been a brand name which has in a sense been ingrained into the Indian mindset when you look at our everyday life. Fair point. All right, moving on in the rapid fire round, I'll break the link and ask a different question. When you think of the customer, who comes to mind? Sriram, how about you answer this?
When I think of the customer, at least in my case, the person who comes to mind is the flower vendor or the vegetable seller on the roadside, the lady. And my biggest challenge is, how do I serve her digitally and give her credit and include her in the financial system?
That's it. But it's also an opportunity. That's what they call the next billion users opportunity. So fair point there. All right. How about we come to you, Nitin? As Gamescraft, I would love to know what you think your idea of the customer is.
So I think of it as someone who is very dynamic, digitally very savvy, who is looking for entertainment online. So the challenge there is how to serve him better, how to keep innovating, keep evolving, and bring him the best entertainment or the best experience which you can deliver everywhere, every time.
And that's part of the game, because when you look at choice, and that word choice becomes a key word in the context of turning users to super fans, because while earlier you wouldn't have choice, you're kind of restricted your preference to a few brands, but these days you have an app for anything, you have a brand for anything, and users have a galaxy of choices. So it really behooves the brands to make that special effort to get them to be loyal to your brand. And there's a positive side, they amplify your message, and there is a negative side where if they don't like your service or if they experience some sort of a disruption, they amplify that message as well. Abhishek, as the world's leading retention cloud, you serve a variety of customers across the world. So if I posed you this question, when you think of the customer, who comes to mind, what would you say to this?
Yeah, it actually is something that I think about practically every day, waking up in the morning, and when I go to bed in the night, all my 1,200 customers across the globe and their end customers, right? The 2 billion people they serve. So we work across variety of industries, and we learned a lot in terms of consumer behavior. But every day, I'm thinking about what can we do to make the lives of these 1,200 customers that we serve better every single day. The Amazon impression is still there, and the second is all of these companies that we work with. One thing that we have seen is they're going through a phenomenal trajectory. They are innovating on customer experience every single day, and we are proud to be a part of the process.
All right. Now, in the context and taking the conversation forward, when we spoke of choice, the key question there is why would a customer choose your brand versus your competitor? So, Ganesh, maybe we'll get your perspective on this. In a sentence, why do customers choose your brand versus your competitors? We see Hitarth has joined in as well. Thank you so much for joining in. We'll continue this conversation with you as well, Hitarth. Go ahead, Ganesh.
Hey, first of all, good evening, all of you. So, you know, in a sentence, if I had to say, why would someone choose, let's say, Chola? It's, I think, the promise of that we make of enabling him to enter a better life. So it's really it's just a trust. So the trust that our consumer has is the reason why he chooses Chola. And specifically, our customers are not the regular banking customers, right? This is the tier 2, tier 3 non-carded, new to credit customers who would find it very difficult to get organized credit, and to whom Chola has been able to serve at scale over multiple decades. So the only reason that someone would choose Chola over someone else is the trust that the brand evokes.
Trust is the keyword. All right, let's see what other keywords add to this question. Anshuman, your thoughts on this in a sentence. Why would customers choose your brand versus competitors?
So I think I mean we are in a very differentiated kind of category. We have two sets of customers. We are a SaaS platform, so we serve the enterprises for their blue collar requirements. I mean blue collar worker requirements, and that that customer is essentially struggling to put all the activities that are there in the life cycle together. So from a SaaS platform point of view, I'm able to actually give him everything on one place, and that's what we are building towards. And if I look at the consumer side, where I see the blue collar worker, also trying to kind of upgrade their life, trying to find put more monies into their pocket, find out a new better job opportunity, etc. We do the second part of the funnel. So there are a lot of apps or platforms that will probably provide jobs to these users, but once they apply, they're not able to identify or find out what happens to it. So that the second part of it, because I have the entire enterprise angle to it, I marry that requirement very well, and I'm able to get back to them. So because of this entire life cycle ecosystem play, we are able to serve both sets of consumers on the enterprise side and the consumer side basically well.
All right. Hitarth, let me bring you into the conversation here. We're having a rapid fire round to understand everyone and understand how they feel about certain issues. So this question of why would, say, a customer choose your brand versus others, you're India's first app-based credit line. So in a sense, a pioneer in your space. So from that perspective, as competition grows, because you can be first, but you can never be the only. So what's your thought on this?
Sure. Absolutely. Definitely, we were the first, and now there are a lot of other players as well. Customers selecting a certain brand or preferring them and maybe like even continuing with them for some time, it's not a quick fix. Maybe it can be a quick fix for a few categories only for a short time period. But in the long term, if you look at it, it is more around what kind of product offering you have and what is the brand promise that you are giving to the customer with a certain understanding, and how are you delivering it. So I think, again, the answer is not so simple. Multiple things are there. However, what you have promised and how well are you delivering that part and how true you are. There will be moments of where we will be tested very hard. But if there is a consistent delivery on your promise, I think eventually the loyalty and the preference builds up and starts reflecting in the business.
Absolutely. Connecting brand promise to consumer expectations.
Right. What
and
you can't
matching
deliver,
it.
don't promise.
Absolutely. And on that note, let's now kind of have a deep dive into some of the issues. And we spoke about consumer expectations. And I want to understand how some of the speakers here are thinking about this rapid evolution which has happened in terms of consumers, the profile of consumers, the digitally connected consumers of today who have their expectations and preferences from them. They expect a certain kind of interaction. They want it to be personalized and they want it connected across channels. So I want to understand, how did your brand sort of map these preferences and expectations to transform users into fans? So Ishendra, maybe we'll start with you. Tell us more about the Jiva story.
Sure. So the reason why we started Jiva was, if you look at the fine jewelry market right now, all the options that a woman has starts from 20,000 plus price range. And there are so many brands there in the 1,000 to 20,000, which is where silver comes into picture. There are so many local brands, but because they're local, what they're failing to provide also is the variety of designs and the trust that a national brand could provide. So because if you see the entire consumer journey about 10 years before, what was happening was there was no internet, and people's knowledge about brands or products that they consume was limited to what was available 5 to 10 kilometer radius around them. Right? But with the whole digital ecosystem coming in, what has really happened is consumers have become so educated about the variety, about the quality of the product, and even about the designs in our case, right? That they are no longer satisfied, with the average quality or the average designs that are available in the market. So what we at Jiva were trying to solve for is that the designs that you get in gold, etc., you can also get it in silver at the 1/10 of the price. So in this fast fashion world, you don't have to think 100 times before purchasing a jewelry which is 30,000-40,000 rupees. You can purchase 15-20 jewelry pieces and wear it with different occasions, right? So what we have understood about the consumer is, what is really important is you give them those varieties, those designs which is not available locally by the local players because of the power of internet. And at the same time, you need to create those services also, right? But one thing which digital brands, essentially fail in delivering initially and their initial journeys is the service element.
Absolutely. And the exclusivity side of things that you mentioned, that also adds value, right? Because you don't find it in your local market.
In your local market, and then you have this local shopkeeper, right? Who will know the person with their own name, who will have the designs which the customer, essentially won't know the profile. What is important is you do those service elements as well, right?
Absolutely. You have to deliver on that. While you've given the hook, you have to reel the customer in as well.
It's with the product and the service element, have been the two very important factors which creates consumers, from normal consumers to a wow consumer.
All right. From new age to an established finance brand, I want to understand your perspective on this. How do you map customer preferences and expectations to convert users to fans? Because as you mentioned, you're looking at capitalizing on the next billion users opportunity. In that context, how do you map their expectations, their wants, their needs, and some insights that you got on that context?
Actually, the mapping was more a post facto thing, basis how consumer behavior evolved, particularly in the last, let's say, 5 years, right? Multiple moving parts have kind of enabled this, right? On one hand, you had the government enabling significant policy level and IT infrastructure level changes with which you could digitize lending journeys. The India Stack API, for example, right? Without that, 5 years, 6 years back, KYC was impossible compared to what we're doing today. While all this was happening, there was the telecom revolution and connectivity, and then COVID, which I think is a kicker. So before 2019, a farmer in, let's say, Baruch, right, used to go purchase tractors by going up to the outlet, looking at what's available, checking on the used vehicles, used tractors. Today he's looking at influencers on YouTube and then taking a decision on whether this tractor makes sense or not. Right. So that's a kind of sea change that's happened in terms of at the discovery stage itself. Right. Consumers like what my Ishendra pointed out. It's no longer restricted to your geography. Geography is now truly history. Right.
But so, how do you deal with the fact that sometimes who were not your competitors? Let's take this example that you get. The farmer is looking for a tractor. These days, the tractor manufacturer is also looking at ways to kind of offer finance to them.
Exactly.
Directly.
So I'm going to that. So in the backdrop of this kind of change in consumer behavior at the discovery stage, if this happened at discovery, leave alone diligence and transaction, which is following then. So it was critical to put in place ways by which we could reach out to the consumer in as many channels at his convenience as possible. So there was no YouTube channel for Chola. There was no YouTube channel. There was no Instagram handle or a Facebook presence until 3-4 years back. So parallelly, we built a separate app which was catering to the auto ecosystem in general and specifically to the nuances of our consumers' requirements. We call it Gadi Bazaar. It was distance from Chola directly. And on Gadi Bazaar is where we started disseminating information and started reaching out to all of these customers in the channels that they prefer to consume and at the time of their convenience, right? Which is what was the big change that we kind of adopted to align ourselves to the discovery chain that's happening with change in the discovery. Then comes the diligence. Diligence and transaction is more about enabling using technology to create those comparisons and then building a digital lending journey. But what was key was ensuring that we are there when the customer is discovering what he wants and ensuring our presence there through by leveraging our own in-house channel through the app and the website and also leveraging the social media acceptance and the adoption that was happening in tier 2 tier 3 towns, right? So the number of influencers, for example, in construction industry has more than quadrupled in the last 3 years. And everybody is you right from bricks to cement to and then tractors, like I said, construction equipment. For everything there's an influencer today, and they have their own ways of reaching out. So much so even the local doctors, doctors who are serving the compulsory government piece there, right, after their graduation, they are going and influencing people.
I've seen influencers for pipe fittings.
Yeah.
This is what you do, and it's amazing how that
this
ecosystem
doctor channel
is.
for the villages is a very active referral channel that we have, through which we get referrals for farm equipment or tractors, etc. Because they are educated, they talk in the local language, they are able to communicate what we are promising, and that's a great alternate channel that we built. It's easier to build an aggregating platform for doctors, right, than for farmers. So that's how we learned these changes happening and built it one by one. So we had a doctor outreach channel, we have a Maestri outreach channel, we have Gadi Bazaar, which is to reach out to used vehicle marketplaces and so on. So that's how we were able to ensure that we are at the discovery phase, at the early stage of the funnel itself, to ensure that we are in the
Get them at the
consideration
start and build bridges. And of course, it also helps when you drive organic conversations. As your discovery
Absolutely,
improves, then everything down the funnel is
So
also.
in fact, so much of paid marketing has not really worked at all for us. Most of it is organic. That's really helping growth.
Fantastic. All right, let's get in an enabler's perspective on this. Abhishek, your thoughts on how brands should go about mapping customer preferences and expectations to turn them into fans. Your thoughts on this?
I think we have come to a place or to an age where customer experience is the new brand. I think when you're buying a product or a service, sure, after the use is done or you procured it, you forget about that. But the engagement, that experience that you have, whether it be in terms of buying it, whether it be in terms of using it, that remains with the consumer forever. So what we're saying is that brands who are focused intently, see, when it comes to product and services, there is a lot of choice. You mentioned about choice, right? There is plenty of choice that is out there in the market. But creating that top-notch customer experience is still a very hard problem to solve in business. Only brands which are intentionally focused on it are able to make it happen. And so what we have seen is, and we have been like an enabler and a partner to a lot of companies that have started from like literally zero, and then have grown into hundreds of millions of active users. And we have seen that across all the brands, one thing they have been consistently focused on is the value proposition and the experience they're offering to the customers. And they have been intentional about it from day one, that no matter what happens, customer experience is important. And then they've been able to utilize a platform in terms of the work that we help them do to make some of that stuff happen.
All right, but value proposition also brings up some interesting conversation points. And one point I want to focus on is that at what stage of habit formation during this value proposition phase do you introduce monetization? Because the fear is that your user loves your service, but the moment you introduce the monetization element, they look to maybe they might go to your competitor who's offering a cheaper route. And then the question comes up, if there's a churn, what would your response be? Maybe Amar, you can take us through the answers for this. How do you deal with this?
See, again, when we were starting this brand, since we were unique in this category because we are India's first footwear brand to make shoes made up of sustainable and natural fibers.
Hmm.
So the pain point, what we are going after is comfort and sustainability. When I say sustainability, because there is no other brand in India which focus on sustainability in terms of making shoes.
Hmm.
So somebody who post-COVID era, there's like people have become more conscious. They understand that now it is more value-centric. What is the value proposition? And how exactly are we educating our consumers? So what we do is monetization is way later in the funnel. It's like first thing, what is it? How do you educate the consumer about the brand? What exactly are the challenges they face in the present ecosystem? Say in the present ecosystem, if somebody wants to buy a pair of footwear, he would definitely go after the Western giants because there is no Indian footwear brand in the last decade or so which has created inroads in the market. So, but how many people know that Bata is not an Indian brand? How many people know that Nike, still people get confused that Nike is an Indian brand? I see so many stores out there. So people get confused. So how do you educate the consumers? So for us, the most difficult route was going online, because as I said in the beginning of the conversation, that when we starting this brand, people asked us that, will you go online? Who will buy footwear online? It's all about touch and feel experience. Second is, where is your store? So we still don't have stores, and we have been 4.5 years in the industry. We have sold over 10 to 12 lakh pairs of our open footwear.
But is it still a sort of a one-on-one interact? Is it still a sort of buy a pair of shoes and that's it kind of an interaction?
No.
Because
So
some
what
of the
we-
brands abroad, they've started these subscription services as
Yes,
well, right?
I'm
Whereby
coming
you
to
can-
that point.
Huh.
So what we do is, when you're engaging with your consumers, it all depends is how you're engaging. Let's say if you take a channel of a marketplace, you're not able to engage with the consumer. What we did is, we did one more difficult route. We did all the fan following or all the traffic we have driven to our own website. That means you're controlling the entire journey. And when you control the entire journey, you know how loyal your customer is. And how are you educating with them? You can have time to talk to them, you can interact with them, understand why they're buying us. So that is where you understand why the consumer is buying us and what are the value propositions we are trying to create. And again, you have various mediums via conversational commerce, wherein you keep interacting with the consumer. And deep in, once we start interacting in the funnel, then there's a monetization to drive more and more in terms of numbers. So that is where we play the monetization. And monetization again has to be not done directly on the face. It's not that just because you're getting a discount, you should buy it. What is the value proposition? So first we need to create the value proposition, then we talk about it. Monetization will come way after. If not, what happens is today the customer is buying you for just because you're at a lower rate. Tomorrow he'll buy something else. So you have to create a community for it. So that's what we do.
Absolutely. And this is actually also seen in the media industry where there's a lot of competition, but now the value proposition question is coming out strongly because then users, they know that this brand does this kind of reporting well, so we'll pay for that service. And it's a good trend because media also needs to be financed.
And one last thing is to your question of subscription model, which has been adapted overseas. Like I was telling to my friend that in India, when we started, the per capita usage or per capita buy was somewhere around 1.7 or 1.8 per year. Now it is close to 3.3, 3.4. That means around 3 to 3.4 people are 3 to 3.4 pairs have been bought by each consumer. Whereas in US, when we started, it was 3.3. Now it's 6.6, 6.8.
So we're just behind the curve.
We're behind the curve, and maybe the subscription model works there. The reason is, yes, people want to have different pairs of shoes every quarter. And that will soon be adapted in India. And we will be the first to do that.
Well, good luck to you. Nitin, let me come to you, considering, I want to understand from a gaming perspective, you already pay to play. How do you approach this question of monetization? If you make users pay for more services, which they assume would be free for them, how would you deal with that dilemma? If your user says, I already am paying to play for every single session, but if you add more, say, microtransaction elements, it's going to drive my interest away. How do you deal with that question?
I'll say that monetization is also required for the sustainability of the business. If you do not monetize properly, then you will be dependent on external funds to fund you, which will lead to some other problems. So I think, as I agree with others, that you need to build a compelling proposition. A consumer should start valuing that proposition, and it should give enough value for the user to start paying for it. So if you have that compelling proposition, he'll basically value you more than your competitor.
All right.
So for us, the experience is a bigger part. So we focus. So gaming is a high touch category wherein, so say if you take a e-commerce, then you go, you select product, you buy it. But the post buying experience also matters, and a lot of offline things come in the post buying experience. If you look at gaming and similarly other services also like OTTs and other digital only services, there the entire flow happens digitally. So the smoothness, the way you conduct yourself, the way you can deliver glitch-free experience matters quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Now, you can go to a free platform, but if there are glitches, you will not go there.
So it's always boils down to the experience. If it's a top-notch experience, folks will pay for it. All right. Sriram, let me come to you. We spoke earlier about, and Ganesh also mentioned, the next billion users opportunity. In this context, when we look at monetization, right, you're trying to attract users to be, in your drive to towards, say, financial inclusion. But when they come on board, you make a lot of services free. But, things can't be free forever. You have to introduce monetization at some point in time. So how are you bracing for that point, or planning rather, strategizing for that point when it comes, and then you monetize certain elements, and then there is a user pushback and say, we expect this to be free?
Very good question, and it's actually a very difficult question to answer, especially in the industry that I'm in. But if you look at it from a macro point of view, if you look at some of the biggest financial institutions in India now, they all rode the wave of the middle class. So the middle class in India at that time was fairly not that affluent, and now the level of affluence has gone up. Their needs in terms of finance, in terms of spending have risen, and these banks have grown along with that wave. And now they've kind of plateaued. If I now look at where is the next wave coming from, that really is the strategic part of what we are doing at Ujjivan. If you look at the next strategic wave, it's going to be the people who are in this next billion, who are the unserved and underserved of today. If we can capture their interest, if we could serve them very well, their needs are going to be the same. They will have the same aspirations, they have the same needs, and if we could serve them in a very prudent manner, delight them, but at the same time make sure that we have the right security, the regulations, and the right physical plus digital model to serve this next billion client base, that will automatically result in the long run in a fairly profitable business, in addition to the very fact of having served this segment.
So it's the same sentiment across sectors. Experience scores above all. If you provide the right kind of experience in the right context for the user, they'll be willing to pay for it.
And this is the experience over years. It's not just in the short run.
And that's where legacy becomes a positive word. These days, unfortunately, legacy has become a negative word, but legacy has a positive connotation to it as well, in terms of trust, which Ganesh had mentioned, because if you have done business with the brand for many years, you're more likely to stick with them. All right, let's explore this aspect also of brand advocates, because we are talking about super fans. So I want to understand from our panel here, how do you identify and nurture your brand advocates? Maybe Hitat, we'll start with you, as you were the first in your space. Did you make a concerted effort to kind of look at who uses this service more? How can we get them to talk more about this service and sort of expand the category in general?
See, one challenge that credit as an industry faces is that not everybody goes ahead and talks to their friend that, hey, I have taken a credit, right, or I have taken a loan. However, from a brand's perspective, if you look at it, the brand has served the customer and maybe like given a good experience, given a good deal, good value proposition, decent flexibility, and over some time, the brand has served the customer. Now, at least in my perspective, this is what an industry like a credit can best expect out of a customer, right? However, what we have also done is, after some time, we started taking some reviews inside our app and started showing them into some of those referral messaging campaigns, wherein the customer could directly, their own written messages could go to their friends, right?
Okay.
Now, this was something that that helped us a little bit to ensure a little bit of a brand advocacy. However, over time, what we also did was we morphed into not just being a credit, but being a full stack neobank, where you also are giving pay later solutions, where you're also giving savings account solutions.
Okay.
Now, when that happened, that's when we realized the power of how we can maybe enter some micro moments where customers realize that, yeah, the service is better, right? Maybe this is something that they didn't promise, but still, wow, this is great. So every time a successful transaction happens, our app shows that, hey, your transaction was super fast, done in 5 seconds. And then there is a small line below it saying this is 85% more than the average transaction rate. Now, when these kind of micro movements are seeded again and again in a consumer's journey, dhire dhire you are letting the consumers know that, hey, okay, this is a good brand, and then brand advocacy kicks in. Now, this is again, as I said, very, very difficult and very, very, and maybe Ganesh and Sriram would agree to my point that credit being an industry, it's very difficult to create advocacy. It comes through trust and how consistent your delivery has been.
But it's interesting, as you mentioned, that you waited for that evolution. You waited till you became a neobank to actually focus more and more on those micro moments, those moments of magic to create the right interaction. Because sometimes we think this is cool, this is new, let's just go, to town with it, with our marketing and see what sticks. But that's an interesting context that you raise here. Maybe Ankit, you could add a point here about, considering what Amar was saying. He was your brand advocate in that sense. He took inspiration from that.
Yeah.
Tell us more about how you build these brand advocates, how you build Amar to talk about it, and what should be, say, the do's and don'ts when it comes to using these super users, super fans to expand the tribe.
See, I think one of the things that we have to appreciate
a bit louder so that the audience.
One of the things that we think, I think that we have to appreciate in today's consumer world is that everybody consumes a lot of information before making a purchase, which means that they're going on Google, reading reviews, they're going on YouTube, watching videos, they're going on Facebook, Twitter, reading the comments of the previous customer, stuff like that. So basically, they consume a lot of content before deciding to buy a product or a service from you, right? So brand advocacy is almost as important as a brand ambassador in about, let's say, 2000s. Well, let's say when Shah Rukh Khan used to come on a TV and everybody used to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to buy this vegetable from this app because Shah Rukh Khan is doing this. But today, your real heroes are out there. The customers are buying products and services from you. And it is our job as a brand, as a company, to enable the advocacy through them. Now, what have we done as a Wakefit? Couple of things. I think before I speak that, one of the surprising thing that, it might be surprising for this group is that Wakefit enjoys almost 50% of the revenue coming only from word of mouth, which means somebody has referred someone else, which means that's a true success. That is what we have achieved with this brand. This happened through multiple ways. We did a couple of things. First is, if you go and check on Google, on Amazon, on Flipkart, we have close to 4 lakh reviews written by customers with an average rating of 4.5, 4.6. We didn't buy them. We didn't pay anything to them. You wouldn't hear the frauds that people are paying to write the
You
reviews.
can spot the real reviews in these apps.
But it's like a foolish step that you pay somebody to write a review and then one negative and then you're done, right? We never did this. We never paid or did anything to them. But we have got 4 lakh reviews. The moment anybody looks at those reviews, right, it speaks of something. It sees, it basically instills that confidence. Secondly, in the early journey of Wakefit, what we did is, I was probably 23, 24, and I had a very small car and just a couple of friends who were able to do the shooting. First 50 customers, I, along with my, 2-3 friends in my car, went along with a video, recording camera, and then went to consumer house early in the morning, 7 o'clock, 6:30, 7:30, because we knew they are going to go to the office and stuff. We randomly knocked in and say, hey, we are from Wakefit. They looked at my face, a 23-year-old, founder is trying to do something. They welcomed, almost everybody welcomed, say, come on, we're going to make a video for you.
Wow.
We sat down, we shot the video, and those videos are now, there are hundreds of videos now live on YouTube. You won't believe those first 10 that I did, many of them have almost 2 lakh views on YouTube alone. And they're almost friends on, to me on Facebook. They still send me a message, hey, you know what? My falana uncle, said, hey, you became a brand ambassador of Wakefit, what? So, that's a true, and the pride that a customer gets, enjoying the services, enjoying the product and telling to the customer, it's a next level thing.
That's the human connection, and that's the story you build with the customer, right? They wouldn't have expected that interaction The fact that you did what you did explains the success that Wakefit has seen. And I'm sure many more success stories will emerge as this human element gains center stage among how brands think when it comes to connecting with their customers. All right, let's move the conversation forward to a dhande ki baat, maximizing customer lifetime value, the do's and don'ts, what to do. Ishendra, what would you say?
Yeah. So maximizing customer lifetime value, it all boils down to the retention, largely, right? And the way we look at retention, Jiva, is largely depends on three factors. One is your product service, second is your communication, and third is the share of basket, right? How much does a consumer purchase and how much are you taking care of? And the way we have decided, how to evaluate each and every vertical is for product and service. The way we measure it is via NPS. So, right, there is an NPS survey which goes to a consumer when they make the purchase. There is an NPS survey which goes after they delivered the product, and third is 3 months after they've received the product. And the first one tests the experience on the website. The second one tests the experience of the service, your customer support, your delivery. The third NPS, which is after 3 months, tests the product bounce, right? Whether the product has sustained 3 to 6 months and consumers are still loving the product. Right? And with these three NPS, you're able to measure how are we scaling in these. Then second is your communication. How well are you in touch with the consumer? Right? Whether your customer is able to know about the new launches, they are relating with the messaging that you're giving, with the entire brand ethos that you're following. Right? And third is the share of basket. Right? If you're just selling one set of products, then for their other needs, they would like to go to a different brand, right? Which is where you leave a room for them. So what you would want to capture is at least, what we try is in jewelry, for almost all of their needs, we should have something for them. Because ultimately, in your first customer acquisition, very few brands make money. Right? Every large brand makes money by retention. The customer which comes again gives you that profit for which each and every one of us aspire for. So solving that via these three metrics is what we try.
All right, Ganesh, your thoughts on this maximizing CLTV? What's to be done? How do you look at questions like who do you run your loyalty programs for, or whom to re-engage? Give us a glimpse of that.
Generically, yes. I mean, maximizing retention is the way to go. But how you go about executing it tactically is a function of the products and the customer that you serve to. So specifically in the context of, let's say, Chola, we are a multi-product company. We have 9 lines of business, of which 2 or 3 businesses constitute about 80% of our customer base. And this is a secured loan, asset-backed financing. So there's an end of life for that asset when a second purchase is required, or a replacement purchase is certainly required. A second purchase is a good story because his business is doing well, so he's adding more commercial vehicles. In case of replacement, it is about, in both cases, we have an opportunity to sell the second loan, third loan, so on. So all along let's say even 5-6 years back, it was through telemarketing and then finding out if he's in the market, etc. But now we're leveraging technology to at least figure out who's in the market to renew his loan. I mean, to change his vehicle or replace his vehicle. Number one. Number two, we keep engaging on an ongoing basis with all our customer base every 3 months at least. We built a product sequencing of sorts, where using analytics, we either on a predictive model or sometimes experimental, we try and position some of our products to drive cross-sell. And therefore try to solve to increase the degree of cross-holding that he has with us. So the greater the products he has of Chola, the less likely he is likely to attract, right? So with all these enablers, these are all table stakes actually, to ensure that we have to do all of these well and exceptionally well, to ensure that, because we are in the consideration set at the time of the second purchase. But what clinches the deal at that point is if you give, and even at that time, there's no guarantee that he's going to still take it from you, right? Someone offers, 0.5% lower interest rate, he's likely to swing. Because in a way, a lending product is commoditized. So how do we ensure that our foot is in the door there and we have a conversation going? Is purely by leveraging technology. So we've got, API triggers which are now available from the various credit bureaus, which tell when someone is in the market for a loan. We also look at, in the case of specifically commercial vehicle financing, we know that his EMIs are paid by the money he makes by running the vehicle. So the moment the EMIs are on track, and there is a typical 4 or 5 year tenure for the loan. In the last 6 months, we start engaging with the customer to position additional products through Gaadi Bazaar as a platform, right? So we kind of profile and keep engaging to drive repeat business. So if you do all of this, the retention goes up, the cross holding goes up, the cost of selling the second, third loan is close to zero. So that's entirely bottom line business.
Fair point. Anshuman, you have something to add, or maybe Sriram, you have something to add to this? Maximizing, customer lifetime value. Quick points of view from both of you, if you have anything to add here.
So again, I think he's put it quite well. But just if I were to add on to that, I would say that in our case, we are serving not just that customer, but also their family. And in many cases, the more services we can provide to this customer and their family, that kind of tends to increase the retention and
dials back to the experience point you mentioned, that the broader the experience that you offer, where it's not just user one, but the family of user one, then it becomes a more robust
experience. Even in the case of digital, it's quite interesting because in many of my customers' cases, the family shares a mobile phone, and that is their primary digital device. And quite naturally, we tend to look at this, and that's how we'll be able to, rather than maximizing the customer's value, I would say maximize our value to the customer.
All right. Anshuman, any points on this you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the final consumer, if I look at it, I pretty much share the same kind of consumer segment where the small finance players would be. So your delivery boys or your security guards, etc. All these guys are someone who'll kind of look at the opportunity of finding a better livelihood on the app that we have. So in that case also, what we do is essentially, one, we are able to provide them with better options in terms of experience and also the final handshake that's there. And because we also have a staffing service, they tend to kind of move into a zone where, because they're trying to increase their earning per hour, the users, we are able to even absorb them at a later date, because some of the opportunities that we would have on a platform, because of the enterprise segment that we have, the requirements are also listed over there. We are able to actually build an entire journey where they work with us or are with us on a. So it is an acquisition platform, plus the experience kind of helps them to get more from the platform itself.
All right, Abhishek, from an enabler's perspective, some of the best practices that you could share in terms of maximizing CLTV. What would you say to our audience?
Yeah, helping brands increase their user retention, helping them increase their lifetime customer value. That's bread and butter for us.
Share some of that with the audience.
Sure, yeah, of course, right. So one of the things that we have seen is, and what we have consciously tried to do is, the traditional thinking, a lot of that has been around thinking around products. This is what we offer, and we have a target customer base in mind, and we are going to sell it in a sort of a uniform manner, right? Treating all customers as a cohort of one, and then products, and then selling to them. What we have tried to do is try to flip it by helping brands put customer at the center of the entire equation, enabling them to think about the segment of one, serving that one user in the most effective manner, thinking about that right customer, thinking about the right product for them, thinking about the right context for them, thinking about the right time, thinking about the right channel. So making sure that all the engagement that is happening is very pertinent for the user. Like, for example, let's say, I can take example, right? Let's say if you want to tell customer that, hey, we are offering an incredible offer to you on loans. A simple thing like the timing. If you send that message at 7 a.m. in the morning versus 10 a.m. in the morning, there's a big difference, right? It's not uncommon in today's world. We see that offers are being sent, but they're being sent when the need has gone away or the need is going to come.
I get them at 2 a.m. in the morning. I wonder why would I suddenly
Absolutely
go about and write a check to that brand.
And all of us are getting these kind of things are happening almost on a daily basis. So what we are helping brands do this scientifically. For that one consumer, can you analyze like the journey? I'll give you a very simple example, right? We all know that like abandoned cart is a typical e-commerce use case, also prevalent in many other industries. Someone added a product to a cart, didn't do the transaction. Now, typically what happens is most marketeers would go ahead and launch an engagement based on their approach, right? Okay, I will send this message 15 minutes. I will send this message after 30 minutes. Like there is guesswork involved in that. We provide very simple. You can go to the funnel, see how much time it takes for a customer to move from one stage of the journey to the next one, and accordingly engage the user in a most effective manner. And all of this, what it does, it increases conversion rates, increases user retention rates. Very like we have seen like customers increasing their retention rates to an order of 2x, 3x by engaging the users effectively, and clearly the lifetime value then goes up.
All right.
Very nicely.
All right. So far, our conversation has covered a lot of the talking points on keeping customers back. I also, while thinking about, kind of designing a conversation around this topic, I was wondering at what point do brands let the customer go? And I raised this point in the context of a conversation that I had with one of the leaders earlier. And they said that they actually prefer a customer who, say, used their service for a day or two and churned out versus a customer who used their service for a month or a month and a half, and then they lost that customer to a churn. They said that was time not well spent in trying to attract and retain that customer. And in the end, they let go. Rather, they went away earlier. Nitin, your thoughts on this? This preference that some of the brands have, that it's better to churn out early, quick, so that you can actually focus on the cohort of users who you think are best placed to stay with you. Your thoughts on that?
So, why will a consumer churn early? He can churn early. So if you have a TG, he can churn early if he doesn't belong to your TG. Or he belongs to your TG, but maybe your product was not able to live to the values or the brand proposition which brought him in the first place.
It's like a chess player entering a boxing ring.
So in the first case, if it happens, I'll have to go back and rework my marketing. In the second case, I'll have to go back on work on my product. But in either case, I do not see any reason why I will prefer early churn. The reason being, more time a user spend on your platform, he explores the product, and I'm talking about more on a digital because I come from that industry. When he explores, he generates a lot of data. I can analyze that data and use that data to further optimize his experiences.
But let's say your TG comes from a certain age category, and let's say someone from a very advanced age category comes because they heard maybe their grandchildren speak about it, and they're just looking around. Maybe they would play a game or two, but they're not exactly hooked onto it because they find it's not working with them. What would you say in that context? Because they used your service for a month or so, you analyze, you try to position your service as their preferred platform. What would you do in that case?
I'll go back and I'll say that how I can basically further sharpen my marketing.
Okay.
So that I get more of the people who belong to my team.
All right. Amar, your thoughts on this?
See, it all depends in our case there are two scenarios. One is, since we have a 7 to 14-day free trial, so that means a consumer can come to our website, buy a product, and then he may like to return it. That is one scenario where, why is he returning it? That's we try to understand. One is because marketplaces like Amazon, Myntra have spoiled the consumers that they order 2-3 sizes and they return 2. So is that the reason? Second could be also a reason that he has a fit issue and he would want to order a new size and he's traveling. So he might go back and say that I don't want at the moment. Third is he didn't like the product. So we understand the first scenario in all the 3 scenarios why he's trying to return the product. So on that basis, we try to re-engage with the consumer. Second scenario is that there's a person who's coming to the website, trying to engage with us, a number of sessions. We study the data a lot because we are into data analytics. We study the data that how much time a consumer is spending on our website, how many sessions he has had in the past, is he spending more time on our flip-flops or the sneakers, and depending on that, we try to engage with the consumers. The consumer has not bought it, say for a certain duration, let's say we target them for a 45-day or a 60-day. Then it is not bought it in 60 days. Then if there is an offer running in, we show them that time. If still is not bought it, then we leave that particular funnel. So we just don't engage with that consumer again, so that we don't waste our effort on something who's not engaging with us. So it all boils down to whether the customer return issue is for what reason. Second, why is he not engaging with us? Maybe because he wants to experience the product. So that is the time we keep popping up saying we have a 7-day free trial or a 14-day free trial. And that what happens, if he still buys it, it's okay. If not, we don't.
All right. Ask the right questions and
Yes.
you will
So
get
it's all
the answer.
depending on the messaging has to be right. And if he's spending a lot of time in terms of, say, on the abandoned cart and not ordering it, then does he need an additional discount? So we study that data and then come back to it.
All right. I also want to move the conversation forward to understand, how do you beat the confirmation bias? Because we are also humans, right? We have a certain perception. We think this is what the user is. And sometimes that can kind of guide your reading of the data that's coming in, which could actually be not the case. So maybe Ankit, you could share your thoughts on this. How do you beat confirmation bias when you're looking at data, especially from this retention aspect?
See, I'm personally a victim of this. I do a lot of.
Tell us your story.
I look at the data and say, hey, this is how you have to look at it, right? So, but I think what I was saying is that I'm personally a victim, and so many are probably couple of people sitting here would like to see the data the way they think in their mind, right? So it's very easy to depict something looking at numbers and say, hey, you know what, this is my theory and it's working. Let's just double down on it. Right? Now, what I have learned in the last couple of years working at Wakefit is it is all okay to be confirmation bias. It is all okay to, let's say, enable the people sitting on the on the table and trying to suggest you, hey, you know what, I think this marketing campaign has to be like this. You know what, I think the product price has to be like this. You know what, I have to be X, Y, Z, right? Now, what happens is you enable an ecosystem of people working in the company who can actually submit their opinions very openly and freely. This is very, very important that you as a founder look at the data differently. Your co-founder looks at it differently. Your CTO looks at it differently, and then different people are making different inferences. What is very, very important is that you have all that set of data. You infer something, but you do A/B experiments to get to the results. So what we do at Wakefit is we don't discard any idea, saying that you took that inference, it's okay. We will choose 5% of the customers, put it on A/B testing on our website or an app, and we said, okay, let me see this 5% customers got this, remaining 5% got this, see who gets better. And just we go by the data and say that, okay, this is working.
All right. Siddharth, your thoughts on this? How do you avoid the confirmation bias?
Well, very similar to what Ankit said. So we also do a lot of testing. However, see, confirmation bias, as he said, we are all a victim of it, and especially marketers, because half the times we are trying to figure out in the data that what is the pattern, did my campaign work, did my hypothesis continue with how I was thinking about it. So what we have seen is that we obviously use multiple platforms, but some of these platforms help us quickly test the message. That's first. And secondly, sometimes just trying to put a friction in your flow, that gives you some kind of an understanding whether this theory holds or not. So, for example, if there is a price discussion that, okay, should we price it well or not? Now, running a campaign on the same segment of customers with some control group, with some small part of it, and seeing if we are able to take them to 2 to 3 different landing pages with different selling propositions or different price offers, and quickly seeing that whether this is working or not. And if it is working, let's see that until what time it works, or until what measure does it work or not. So whether there is some padding to our hypothesis or not, that's something that we have done even after we have seen that the hypothesis is working, to test it out. So again, it's obviously a culture that eventually builds, and it's not easy to do. But that is how we try to stay away from it. But unfortunately, I think we also sometimes fall into the confirmation bias.
All right. Let's also understand in the context of micro moments that we spoke about earlier, and Ganesh, you spoke about this. I want to understand, we spoke about confirmation bias. Now it's about leveraging data to create an effective, hyper-personalized experience for the customer, especially now that we're talking about context. Earlier, it was, I think that the theory was slightly simplistic. Now it's much more complex. So what are some of the best practices that you could share when you spoke in the context of these creating this magic micro moments for a whole base of your customers and so many moving parts? From your experience, what are some of the best practices you would share with our audience here?
I think and a very important thing to do is to capture every bit of data that's possible and store it for mining. You never know when it really starts throwing insights.
But does that put more pressure on you? Because we are not in a third-party world. We're in a first-party world where you need to engage them in a way that they give you the data.
Correct. So there are those obvious overt signals that are easily capturable, and there are those covert signals for which you need to kind of build a sense. Your spidey sense needs to kind of capture that, right? So, for example, I'll take the case of a platform that we built for used vehicle transactions. Now, the earlier world of logging in and using is all gone now. Right? Everyone you just need the OTP to log in, and then you take. But you need to, and there are times when you have to enable sessions to happen even without a registered user coming in, where you have no idea at all of what he's doing. So how do I build personalization in that user's context? He's not given his information to me, but when he comes back to my website or uses MWeb instead of the app, right? I need to ensure there's continuity of experience. So we need to capture those, data points that I said, and and today in a cookieless world, it's getting even more difficult. Earlier, with cookies, we could create some kind of personalization around that. So we are trying to figure out, place those, I would say, clickbait, for what a better word, to get some, hook by which we can identify the user. So even though we do not have specific information about his particular identification, but at least we can, using some big data algorithms, can create a near personal experience when he's coming. This is for a non-logged in user. For logged in users, there are standard approaches that are, e-commerce industry has enabled us. In fact, there are SaaS platforms that will help you do it. The AWS has some brilliant products with which you can easily build those personalized experiences, right? So, so while this is, so it's important to collect as much data as possible of non-logged in users. And one post logged in, it's pretty easy to discern and then build a thing. Then enabling the context to get the personalization to kick in. Right. So it's, for example, for a person who's looking for a used vehicle who has a certain budget and a certain time frame to buy, the obvious thing to show is to show vehicles that are matching his requirement when he's coming back. Right. But a next extra step would be, look, I can, I know you spent some 30 minutes looking at this Brezza, but you still didn't go ahead. Right. So is there any specific thing that you would want to talk about the Brezza? I'll have my assistant to come in. So at the earlier construct was you take him to a page which has the vehicles that are obvious matches. The current context is take him to a page with a chat starting, saying that, look, you spent 30 minutes on this car. Can I answer something? Is there something that I can, help you?
And you've given them enough time
set
as
the
well.
Context. Then the personalization automatically starts again. So that's where you leverage data and AWS kind of capabilities to do this at scale.
All right. Sriram, let me get you in on this and extend the question to also understand how you can leverage data in a more analytics-driven approach to affect customer change, change their behavior, whether it's educating them about an underutilized service or managing their expectations when there is a service outage. Any lessons in excellence that you could share in that regard?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm actually going to deviate a bit from your question. And I'll say that, the biggest learning points are usually customer complaints and service issues. And these can get really tricky at times. But you learn the most from the customer or about your own product or service. And I'm looking.
So let me change that question. How do you change adversity to opportunity leveraging data?
Yeah, that's a very nice way to put it. And so I would say it's not just the data, it's about the kind of edge case that came up because of that complaint. And then you go back and look at your entire process, try to figure out what it is that you can do. And that for every complaint, there's probably 100 people who did not complain, but who had the same issue and are now silent. So now how do we go back and proactively address this? So this is kind of results in a change in the customer's view of the brand or the bank. And then they become more loyal, and so you kind of converted a potentially unsatisfied customer into an advocate.
All right, Nishendra, you want to add in here, using adversity as opportunity, and in the broader context of affecting customer change, because whether we look at what you do, what some of the other brands like Licious have done, it was niche categories earlier. You guys made that foray. You made it into a mainstream, sort of a emerging mainstream phenomenon. You affected consumer change. So how did you leverage data to effectively change customer behavior?
Yeah. So actually, at scale, data is one of the most important part, right? initially when we were getting 50 orders in a day, it was very easy for us to, call 10, 20 of them and understand what is going wrong and what is something that we can do better. But right now, especially one of the very big data point as I was speaking, right, that we track, which is NPS. The way we leverage it, for example, we realized that our 3 months NPS is not as better as it should have been, assuming that the product experience would have played out the way we would want. And then when we went deeper into this, then we realized, okay, what is happening is for some of the consumers, their jewelry is getting broken or there are some plating issues, etc., etc. Then we went deeper and then we understood that, okay, in the offline world, they had Tanish, they had their local offline store where they would go and just give that jewelry to the person and then that person would fix. Versus in online, given we're not giving that service, etc., this part of the entire value proposition is missing. And then we went back and then now what we're doing is we're fixing this part of the value proposition. So the way the entire data has flown for us in improving customer experiences, especially in the markets which are becoming. For example, in silver, there is no brand or there is no one who gives lifetime replating guarantee or who gives a buyback in the jewelry. But building some of those infrastructures or identifying with the data really helps.
All right. Amar, your thoughts on this affecting consumer change? How do you leverage data
again,
for that?
As Ishan pointed out, one is when you do 50 orders a day, 100 orders a day, that time it is manageable in terms of the customer experience being good. When you're scaling and when you touch around, say, 3,000 orders, 5,000 orders a day, that is the time customer experience can also go for a toss. In our case, wrong product being delivered sometimes. He's ordered a flip-flop getting a sneaker and a sneaker getting a flip-flop. And how do you manage that at scale? Similarly, people compare, if they're talking about e-commerce, they compare with the best. That is Amazon, Myntra, saying that I want my order in 24 hours or 36 hours. So what we do as a brand, that at scale we have learned it, that we need to have multiple warehouses across India and serve the consumer in the same mindset. Because today's consumer is like, aaj hai, kal nahi hai, if you don't serve them. So they can start comparing. And when they draw comparisons, that is the time you lose out what you have done in educating the consumer about your brand. If you're not able to serve them. Similarly, if the experience is not top notch, then you should be the first person to apologize. Whether you're a founder or you're a co-founder or whether you are the head of operations, it's pretty simple. Call the consumer and talk to them and resolve the issue. That is when you can re-engage with the consumer. See, what happens is that at cases, now since it's digital, people reach out very, very fast. And they start drawing comparisons. When they draw comparisons, it's important that how are you solving the pain point. And with us, what we do is every week, that is on a Saturday, what have been the challenges in that week? What are the consumers which have been complaining about our services or about the product? How can we improve it? And how best we have solved that consumers? We record that conversation and we play that conversation. And let it be a team lead, let it be a manager, or let it be even a CEO who's called up to ensure that the consumer's pain point was resolved and he's re-engaged with us, bought a few more pages. In the next meeting, maybe a month later, yes, he's re-engaged and has bought that pair. So we tell that success stories also within the team that ensures that the flow is there.
All right.
So again, you treat consumers as you're treating yourself. And you do not want to treat yourself badly. Similarly, if you're serving one customer or you're serving 10,000 customers a day, you have to give the customers the priority. And that is where you keep on engaging with them.
All right. Before I go to the audience, I have one last question in this context, taking this forward, Ganesh. The idea is, of course, the customer is always right. But sometimes there are certain elements of the brand which also need to be constant because that connection needs to be maintained. So how do you push the envelope in terms of, let's say, UX or user features, but still maintain some of the core elements or experiences which sort of built your brand? It initially brought you to the forefront of a whole lot of customers because the brand's evolving, the customers evolving, they get more demanding, they expect you to change. And there is, of course, that is to be considered. But there are certain elements which need to be seen so that your brand sticks out from your competitors. What would you say to that sort of dilemma? What does a brand need to do?
To my mind, UX is all about, it's not about how the product appears, etc., or how the website appears, or how the app is. It's about how it works. how the promise works. So in the context of a phygital brand like, let's say, Chola, where lending is the primary product, right? There's been an offline experience that has already been set as a benchmark. And when we are building a UX equivalent, which is supposed to be at least improve on the offline experience or marry the offline with the online, etc. At all aspects of the stages of the journey, the experience of the customer needs to be kept in mind while designing it. So it requires a complete rethink of how the lending process itself happens. So that's what we adopted to build UX at the core center of the overall digitization of what we're doing. But I think the bigger point is, as a part of, let's say, in the larger context of CX, UX is a subset. And UX is not about looks, it's about how it works. If you are able to crack it and ensure that you deliver the promise very well in the UX, in all aspects of interaction design, UX automatically solves for it.
All right. Ankit, a quick word from you. Point of, you have, let's say, a certain look, a certain feel to your customers, which, let's say, your initial cohort of customers like. But as your customer base expanded, they expect you to change. But then you have to reconcile with, we looked a certain way, but now we have changed completely. So how, as a founder, how do you reconcile with that?
No, I think we had this classic problem. We were essentially a mattress company, then we became a sleep company. We started selling bed sheets, pillows, comforters. Then came a day that we want to become a home solutions company where we start selling furniture, right? Now, this was a big leap from just being a mattress company to just selling a sofa to a customer, right? Now, we were literally really afraid in terms of saying, hey, now, you know what? First page, home page, any page that anybody comes in, reads about how the mattress is comfortable, how should you choose a mattress, what is the right density, and blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of information just matters everywhere. Now, suddenly, one fine day, the page opens and I say, hey, you know what? A great looking sofa, a great looking bed, a great looking dining table, and matters just occupying 10% of the space. It was a nightmare for us to believe that we can actually shift from just a mattress to a home solutions company, and we will not lose our first set of customers who were mattress customers. They'll continue to come in, they'll continue to bring in a lot more customers, right? But what we learned is, if you go very controlled through A/B experimental phase, it really doesn't matter. What you have to look at is that when a consumer comes to your application or a web looking for a product, whether he or she is able to land to the page where they want, is the discoverability good? Are they able to actually find the product at the price and the service that they're looking at it? I think the core remains that not many changes are good. For example, we have built the CRM in-house, and people were saying let us change the UI UX of this. We said it's always best to keep the same element of user experience instead of changing it, because when you look at the same screen 100 times, you get used to it and you know exactly where the button should be pressed. So we believe that there's a fine set of elements that needs to be always fixed, that a customer comes and clicks here and goes from here to A to B to C to D. We define the journey. We stick to the basics. But when it comes to a big leap, I think only an A/B experiment is the way.
All right. I'm sure we can continue this conversation as we break outside. And I hope our talk today has kind of seeded new ideas into turning users into super fans, as we have discussed about transforming customer journeys. So on that note, a loud round of applause for all of our panelists for giving us the time. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course, it was very interesting, informative and insightful session. Once again, for the moderator, of course, and for the panelists, a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anita.